Good morning and welcome to the Morning Spotlight podcast. I'm your host, Mike Cam. I am broadcasting from the Morning Spotlight studios in Morristown, New Jersey, but this is episode 2 of the PodMax global event here on December 4th. This is going to be our second installment of podcast episodes. Our guest for this episode is a high school business and marketing teacher, real estate investor, so he fits right in with everybody that listens, and personal finance advocate in Denver, Colorado. In his 18 years of teaching high school, he has taught a variety of business subjects, and his lasting impact as a teacher is apparent by the hundreds of former students who stay connected after graduation. He also volunteers in the Money Wiser initiative out of the Colorado Attorney General's office and with a few other handpicked experts from around the state. He's a blogger and author. He is Dan Sheeks. Dan, welcome.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. I'm excited to have you on. So like I said before we got on here, you don't look like the typical guest that we have on this show, but that's okay because we could figure out how to make this, you fit into my structure. All right. So I want you to kind of take us through your background first, just so everybody listening kind of gets to know you a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. I've been a high school teacher for 18 years. That's kind of my bread and butter. And I do love my job. I have amazing kids and I work in an amazing school and I teach classes like entrepreneurship, personal finance, and marketing. And it is a lot of fun. But, I kind of always knew that personal finance education was something that just needed to be, every young person just needs to have that. And it's not so. And in our country, it's not really stressed. And really as a nation, we're pretty financially illiterate. So, a few years ago, I decided that I needed to start doing something to make that more of a reality for young people, that they get that education. So I have my hands in a few different things and I just advocate for young people getting that knowledge and those skills, strategies, knowing those concepts about how to manage their money correctly. And we can go in a lot of different directions with that, but that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah. Awesome. So I wish that I had someone that taught me how to do personal finance as a kid, aside from my mom saying, stop spending money. So I definitely agree. It's something that's very important. It doesn't get taught enough or talked about enough. Like you did all the chemistry and the shapes and, geometry type stuff. But personal finance is definitely something. It's like all those things that once you become an adult, like I'm 30, so I'm still working my way towards like full-time adulthood. But, it's just some of those things that you realize, like, I have no idea like how to do X, Y, Z, and then you just kind of like learn on the fly, make mistakes, but that's what life's all about. Right.
That's exactly it. I think as a nation, and it's not just, I'm 46, so I'm part of Gen X. You're a millennial, and even Gen Z coming up, and even baby boomers. None of us, there was no generation where we were taught about even the basics of personal finance. And so every generation has just kind of had to figure it out by themselves. And like you said, trial by fire, or just, we end up making a ton of mistakes. And the sad thing is so many things can be done at a very early age that can entirely change decades of your life later on. Yeah. And we all kind of miss that. And there's a lucky few that have parents that really understand money and will teach that to their kids. But it's not many. It's not many. So.
Right. So how do you, so obviously are you in a public school system? Or are you in a private school system?
I teach at a public school.
Yeah. Okay. So how do you so I'm just curious because I don't know much about the education system. I thought I wanted to be a teacher in college, but it was going to take me too long to graduate. So I was like, I'll just do political science. And now I do a lot of different things. But so how do you kind of fit in like that personal finance type curriculum into a public school curriculum? Because I feel like public school curriculum, and maybe it's different here in New Jersey as it is in Colorado. It probably is very similar. But like, is that a challenge to kind of make sure that you work that stuff in because that is something that you're passionate about to kind of fit in the broader spectrum of a business curriculum in a public school system?
Yeah, it's interesting because it looks so different. Every state is given the autonomy to kind of run their education system as they want. And the federal government keeps their hands off for the most part, which I think is a good thing. So in my home state of Colorado, personal finance education, the way it should look is a lot of schools have a semester-long personal finance class, including my school. But for the most part, across our nation, it's an elective class. There are a handful of states, I think 8 now, that do require a semester-long personal finance class for high school graduation, and kudos to them. They get it. But most states and within those states, most districts and schools do not require, they might have like a unit embedded in this class or that.
Right.
But my school that I teach at, I am lucky enough that even though it's not a requirement, which I think it absolutely should be, we have a business department, and there are elective classes within that. So I teach a semester-long personal finance class. Now, it is an elective. The good part about that is that most students who are in my class, they want to be there. They understand, or their parents at least have said,
right,
you need to take this class. It's going to change your life.
Yeah.
Now, the downside to that is roughly 5% of the graduates from my high school will have taken that class when they leave the doors of the school and go out into the real world. So I do have, it's a semester-long class. So I have a curriculum and I have things that I cover. And so I can really hammer those concepts with students because I have them for a whole semester.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. So what are some ways that you're able to what are some things that you do to help teach kids how to be responsible when it comes to money and business and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. I mean, I just, when I assume they're starting from square one, right?
Right.
I assume that my students, and they're anywhere from sophomore to seniors, that they don't know anything. And generally that's the case. I get a few that are in there that they've done their own research and they're really into it. And that's why they've taken the class and they have a good foundation for some stuff. So, we start with the very basics, start with financial goal setting and how that can affect your long-term financial future. We start, and then we get into, just simple things like checking accounts, savings accounts, credit score, using credit cards intelligently. Right now in my class, we're talking about investing in the stock market and what that looks like. So we do the basics, but then I always am able to kind of pull in my personal stories around how I manage my money, right? And I have guests, friends of mine that will come in and do the same. And I think that's really where the students will connect, and they can see a lot of the guests I have come in are very young, in their 20s.
Right.
But they're doing a lot of things right. And so they can relate to them and say, what, if they're doing it, I can do it. And I can change my life financially for the better and make my future look bright. Right.
Because it's like a real thing. You could see somebody like, oh, they're not too far removed from where I am right now, and this is what they're doing. It's like a real world stuff. That was like always the thing that, maybe like school, I don't know, in certain aspects, I'm sure, there were classes that I took when I was in high school that, they kind of made sense moving on in life. Right. But then like trying to bridge that gap is sometimes difficult. But once you're able to put it in like a real world experience, like, oh, this is why I need to know this is always good. I want to talk about the one thing that I was looking here when I was reading through your bio and doing some research on you last night when I found out that you were going to be one of the guests on the show. DECA, DECA call it DECA?
Yeah. Yep,
okay. All right. Good. I want to make sure I wasn't making up an acronym just because, all right. So take us through what that is, why you do it, how it works for the kids, all that kind of stuff.
Sure. Yeah. DECA. I've been a DECA advisor for my entire career. It's a marketing club, basically. So any students enrolled in business classes, especially marketing class. So I also teach marketing classes. That's kind of my main focus, actually. And so the marketing club, it's actually an international club. Students from all across the country and a few other countries will join DECA for the year. And then there's a number of different things we can do within the DECA club. Well, in a COVID year, it looks quite a bit different. We're limited.
Everything looks different in a COVID year. Yeah.
But in normal years, we do everything from social events and community service. And then we do competitions. That's kind of the most fun part is we take the kids on different trips and they compete in business scenarios and business plan creation and things like that. So the students love it. It's a lot of fun. And it definitely prepares them for their future.
Awesome. All right. So the one thing that I definitely want to ask, and I was doing research last night, trying to pull out some stuff because obviously like a teacher is not normally, like I said at the beginning, not somebody that I normally have on here. But one thing that really jumped out at me, and I'm just going to ask the question as I read it from the site. So this is your writing and I'm just reading it. What the F is SheeksFreaks?
Yes.
Let's talk about SheeksFreaks.
Yeah, let's do. So, in my pursuit of advocating for personal finance education, I found out very quickly that not everybody's on board with that. And the decision makers, at least in my state and even in my district, were not interested in changing the system so that personal finance was available to all, was required for all students. So I came up with a different way. I kind of still ask myself, well, how am I going to pursue this? Because I know it's so important. And I started an online community for young people. I believe it's the first ever for young people that focuses on not just personal finance, but also early financial independence. And I named it SheeksFreaks. So, just a quick explanation for that. Sheeks is my last name. And the freaks part comes from the idea, and it's so true, that if you are a young person, let's say 15 to 25, and you are not just interested in money, but you're actively pursuing knowledge for your financial future. You are trying you're doing lots of things to learn about money and investing in early financial independence, then that is not a normal thing. Most people, when they're, let's say, 20, are thinking about anything but money. And they're thinking about, how can I spend all the money that I have? And it's not very much. So
Right.
that is different. Those young people are unique. And so in a way, they're kind of a freak because they're so different in a good way, right? They're a freak in a good way. And so that's where the SheeksFreaks name came from.
I love it.
So
I think that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just young people who are motivated to learn about money now so they can change their future.
Awesome. Yeah. So what are some things that you do? Like how do you attract, this is going to sound like a terrible question out of context, but how do you attract kids to your site?
How do I attract teenagers? Yeah.
Yeah, right. Not that way. So let's talk about from the freaks, the SheeksFreaks standpoint. How do you attract kids to get interested in that? Because obviously you have like a base because you're a teacher and you're teaching these kids actively, and I'm sure that they're part of that community as well. How do you get people from outside of your little community?
Just one at a time, honestly. And I started the SheeksFreaks platforms. And right now we mainly there's three main platforms. We have a website, an Instagram page, and a YouTube channel. And so it's really just finding one at a time. And I'll be honest with you, I've struggled, and I don't talk about the SheeksFreaks platforms in my classes a whole lot.
Okay.
There's a little bit of a gray line there because it is a small business. I don't make any money.
Gotcha.
Eventually, maybe I will, but right now, I have no intention of, I didn't create SheeksFreaks to make money. I have nothing to sell. It's really just about spreading information. And so, but still, it is kind of a side project of mine. So I do direct some of my students to my website to read the blog posts because they align perfectly with what we're learning in class. And I will mention it here or there, but I like, for instance, I don't require my students to become members of the SheeksFreaks community. So, I'm out there on Instagram putting out what I think is good content. Same with YouTube. The website, we have blog sites, and we feature different freaks on the website with what they're doing, and we have success stories. And I also have a mastermind group of young people, and you'll like this, with the real estate twist. I've connected with a number of young people, anywhere from 15 to 20 from around the country, and we have a mastermind group and they're all interested in real estate investing. They're all, future real estate investors. And they will probably be buying their first property in the next 6 months to 6 years, somewhere in that time, depending really mostly on their age.
Right.
So I meet with those kids, and they're members of the SheeksFreaks community, and and hopefully it grows and reaches more people. But even if it doesn't, it's just about giving back, really, for me. But it's about helping young people, at least putting it out there, and hopefully it catches fire.
Right. Okay. So I'm like looking through the website, which, I'll remind everybody at the end of the show, but all the stuff that you've talked about, SheeksFreaks, the website, the Instagram page, I'll make sure I link all that stuff in the show notes so people know where to go to get it. And maybe we'll get you some New Jersey people to kind of join up and be a freak, which would be great. So what are some of like your, I guess, core messages? Like if there's a couple things that you want to make sure that whether they're SheeksFreaks or they're not, whether they're 15 years old or 30 years old or 55 years old, like what are some like of the core things that you think people need to be aware of as they're, in a personal finance standpoint?
Yeah, great question. And I had two come to mind. One, and I would say this is probably most important, because this is why I think people don't learn about personal finance. And so my first message would be, it is not complicated. Money is really not that complicated. Earning money, saving money, and investing money is really not that complicated. There are, unfortunately, or maybe it's a good thing, a lot of companies out there who it's in their best interest to make money seem complicated, because they make money off of people when they think they need to get help. And I'm not saying that you should never have, for instance, a financial advisor or somebody help you, or pay somebody to help you with your money. But when you're young, it really shouldn't be that complicated. It's as simple as, let me earn a little extra money, let me spend a little less, let me save the difference, and then let me invest that in a really easy way. I recommend that, just open a brokerage account and start investing in an index fund. If that's all you do, and that's really simple, then if you start that when you're 18, 19, 20 years old, you will be miles and miles ahead of your peers in 10 to 15, 20 years. And so it really can be that simple. And if, I think people think, especially the investing piece of that is so complicated that they just shut down and they never get started. So that would be the first message. The other message I would share, it comes from a community that I'm a part of called the FIRE community. If you're into real estate, maybe you've heard of that, but it's the Financial Independence Retire Early community. And it's been gaining a lot of steam in the last 5 years. It's been around for a couple of decades, but it's the idea that if you make good decisions with your money and you employ different strategies, you don't have to work till you're 65. That is not a requirement. There are other options where you can create passive income streams and invest your money wisely, and then live off those investments so that you can retire, years and sometimes even decades before age 65. So that would be the second message, is just to know that there is another option out there other than the 9 to 5 to your 65 grind, right, of reaching early financial independence and then having the freedom of time to probably continue working, or at least doing, but it can look however you want that to look.
Right. So let's talk about investments. So you've touched on real estate investments. I heard you say stocks before, index funds. I'm not a financial expert by any stretch of the imagination. And honestly, I should become a SheeksFreaks because I don't even know what I'm doing. So let's talk about the different types of investments, because this is predominantly, like I mentioned before, a real estate focused show. And we're going to get into your personal real estate investing a little bit later. But what are some things that you see that are like more risky? They're maybe better suited for people at different points in their life. Like take us through some of the investments that you think are sound financial investments to try to get in on the ground floor if you're a young person trying to invest.
Yes. And I will say, just like you, Mike, I'm not I'm not a investor expert. And I also really only deal with giving advice to young people. And so I try to keep it simple, because
we like simple. We're good on simple. That'd
exactly.
be better for me, honestly. Yeah.
So I try to steer my young people towards. I definitely inform them about real estate investing, because I think it is one of the best ways to invest money. There are so many positive aspects to real estate investing, and there's so many ways that it can grow your net worth. That it's something I definitely advocate for young people. And there's a certain strategy, if you've heard of house hacking, that I definitely try to educate them about. If you're a young person, I think it is the best way to get started in real estate investing. And so I will explain that to a lot of my young kids. And there's a couple great books out there about that strategy. And it really is pretty simple. It doesn't mean that it's easy, but it's pretty simple to do a house hack strategy for real estate investing. So I encourage most of my young people to buy their first property by age 20. There are things you need to do between, let's say, age 17 and age 20 to get to that point. It's not like you can just go out and do it. You need to have a good credit score. You need to have a solid income stream.
Are we talking single family homes? Are we talking multifamily? Are we talking commercial stuff? I'm obviously not obviously anything big because you're only 20 years old, but does it matter? House hacking can work for single family or multi-unit up to a fourplex. Okay. So somewhere in that range. Gotcha.
And then beyond that, I think, you don't only want to invest in real estate. Diversification is a good strategy. And so I then will steer them towards index funds. which again, it's simple. And actually, to be honest, it's the proven method that works best over time. Very low fees, and you invest in the market in general. So you're invested basically in, what your investment does is what the market does overall. And if you're in it for the long haul, and I stress this big time, I tell my students in the SheeksFreaks, I say, you should not be investing money in the stock market or even in real estate unless you're going to put it there for the long term. It's got to be a minimum of a 10-year investment. If you need that money, or you think you're going to need that money, maybe in a couple of years you're going to buy a car or whatever it might be, then you really shouldn't be investing that money, because it could take a hit in the short term, and you're not going to be able to spend it on what you were planning to spend it on. So we're talking at least a 10-year minimum, hopefully 20, 30, 40-year investment. And if you do an index fund in the stock market, then you are going to, it's going to be a great investment for you in the long term. Playing the stock market, a lot of young people get really excited about things like day trading or investing in individual stocks for companies that they love. Young people love companies like Tesla, Google, Apple, and they just want to dump money into individual stocks there. I get that. I did that. I know that when you're young, that sounds really sexy and exciting, but I say, the quicker, there's a timeline. We all kind of start off, a lot of us, we want to invest in individual stocks or day trade. And we always kind of end up at a much smarter investment strategy like an index fund. So the shorter you can make that timeline where you kind of learn by your mistakes and get to an index fund investing strategy, the better. And if you can start there, even that's the best strategy.
Right. Do you find it, because you work with a lot of, what are we at, Gen Z now?
Yep.
A lot of kids in that generation. Obviously, I'm a millennial. We have our own stigmas about us, even though I don't think that all of them are true, but some of them definitely are. The one main thing, and it was interesting that you said like the 10-year commitment, and I'm sure that there are people that understand like the money just doesn't like just automatically happen and you're rich now. Do you find it difficult to get past the barrier of like that instant gratification of what, my generation and generations after me, really everybody, the way that the world works now, to kind of break through that barrier and kind of educate from that standpoint?
Yeah. I mean, everybody's looking for that get rich quick scheme or that way to do it. And if you jump on YouTube or Instagram, there are
everybody's rich.
Hundreds of people who are willing to teach you about their get rich quick scheme for a price, honestly.
Right. Which is how they get rich, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. And it just doesn't work. There is no get rich quick scheme. And if it sounds too good to be true, then it is. So I preach this to the young people I work with, both in and out of my classroom. I say there is no short-term get rich strategy. It takes time. It always is going to take time. You have to allow compounding interest to work to your advantage. And that only happens over a period of time. Now, it's not to say you can't reach financial independence at an early age. That is definitely possible. That's been proven many times.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you're going to be rich. That means you're going to be independent and you get to spend your time the way you'd like to. But you're not going to be a billionaire. Sorry.
Yeah. Damn it. So before we get into your real estate investment, because I do want to talk about that, not a lot. So some of the episodes that we've had on this show talk a lot about content creation. So I'm interested to see kind of like how you decided that you were going to go from being a teacher that does, business, education, marketing, whatever. Obviously, I'm sure the marketing stuff comes into play, but how do you make that jump into the content creation side to kind of put stuff out there for people?
The content creation has been, honestly, Mike, it's been a learning process. When I first started decided to create the SheeksFreaks platform or community, I had my own Instagram, my personal Instagram account that I actually use mostly for school, honestly. Because my friends, Gen Z, were not really Instagrammers. Right. So I would post things from our DECA club that we talked about earlier, trips that we were doing and things that we were doing in the classroom. I would post on that Instagram account. So I was familiar with Instagram and YouTube, honestly. But then when I started creating content for SheeksFreaks and developed those channels, I've learned a lot. I'll just say that. And I'm also trying to reach Gen Z, which they have their very specific way they like to consume their content.
Yeah.
I do not put my face on the brand at all.
Okay.
Because young people do not, I don't think, And I've polled quite a few of my students to ask them. They don't want to see someone who's basically their dad telling them about how to manage their money. They don't. Right?
Shut up, Dad. Yeah.
Exactly.
One of those kind of things. Yeah.
So I've had a lot of young people. I'm very grateful. Some of my alumni, and then part of my SheeksFreaks mastermind group, they've stepped up and they've created, I'll kind of give them a lot of direction. And I've written a lot of blog posts, and I have alumni that will take the blog posts, make it into a YouTube video. We put that up on YouTube. We put that up on Instagram TV. And so I have young people, a variety that will help me create content, because their face, being in their early 20s is much more relatable than someone like me.
Right. So you talk about the blogging. So you blog for Bigger Pockets. So how did you get started with the blogging side of it, and how did you get connected with those guys?
Well, starting blogging for Bigger Pockets, I reached out to them and said, I think one thing Bigger Pockets is missing is a strategic message to the young people of your community. And there are people younger than 15 that are in the Bigger Pockets community. And if your audience is familiar with real estate investing, I'm going to guess they know Bigger Pockets. So
right.
They were open to that idea. So I became, an authorized blogger for Bigger Pockets. And I've written several articles that really are either for young people or for parents of, let's say, teenagers. And then, so I have those blog posts, but then when I started the SheeksFreaks website, it originally was just a blog website. And I've posted, 25 or so blog posts on there as well, and on my own site. And the connection with Bigger Pockets is actually an interesting story. Bigger Pockets, if you don't know, is headquartered in Denver, Colorado, where I live.
Did not know that.
And my wife and I we're huge fans of real estate investing, and we do it ourselves, which we'll talk about, I know. And there was a meetup at Bigger Pockets headquarters, I think 4 years ago or so. And my wife and I said, well, we got to go. We loved Bigger Pockets, and we still do. So we went to the meetup. We met an employee there. His name was Craig Curlop. And we just, we started a relationship with him. It was really just about helping each other out investing. And when I got to know Craig, I said, Craig, you need to come into my classroom. You need to come into my classroom and talk to my students about what you're doing. Because he was house hacking. He was in his mid-20s at the time, and he was crushing it. And so he came to talk to my students. It went really well. And I said, well, Craig, I want you to come back next year, and I want you to come in on a regular basis every month or two. And he said, absolutely. And he said, I'm going to bring my friend Scott Trench with me as well, who's now the CEO and president of, I think the CEO of Bigger Pockets. So Scott and Craig have been coming in my classroom on a regular basis since then. And so I've been blessed and super grateful to have a relationship with those two guys. Craig has since left Bigger Pockets to do bigger and better things, because he reached financial independence at, I think, age 27, because he crushed it.
Right.
Scott is also financially independent, but is sticking around Bigger Pockets because he loves it. But that connection with Bigger Pockets has proven very fruitful, I think, for my students and for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's good to have those types of connections for sure. So networking always works. So
yes.
Let's talk about the real estate investing, because that fits in perfectly with the type of stuff that the people on here come to expect from the Morning Spotlight. So
yeah,
what type of stuff are you investing in? Where? Let's do what types of stuff you're investing in. Is it just single family homes, multifamily stuff?
We have 15 units, but it's amazing the variety in those 15 units. We have single family homes. We have small multi-unit. We have a duplex, a triplex, and a fourplex. We have out-of-state investments, and we have one property that's a short-term rental, so Airbnb full-time, and we've done some BRRRRs. So a lot packed into 15 units.
Right. So I know you said out-of-state. Like where are we talking?
Yeah, so we live in Denver. We have 3 single-family homes in just outside of Detroit, Michigan, in a suburb called Wayne, Michigan.
Okay. All right. So my question is, and we've had a lot of different people on here that are real estate investors, obviously. And a lot of them do like multifamily investing throughout the country, and they all have like big teams and stuff like that. I'm interested to see, so you have properties in Michigan, you live in Colorado. How did you get that property? Like, did you go see it yourself? Do you have a connection to Michigan? How does that work?
I have never seen those houses. I don't think I've ever been. I was actually born just outside of Detroit, but moved out of the state when I was 3. Okay. So it's possible that when I was like 2 years old, I might have driven through Wayne, Michigan. Yeah. But I've really never been there. And so We took the strategy from Bigger Pockets, and a lot of people in that community were doing long distance real estate investing. And so we built our team in Detroit from Bigger Pockets. We have, as David Green would say, the core four. We have our agent, we have our lender, we have our contractor, and we have our property manager. And they are the boots on the ground to get things done for us. I'm a firm believer, as many people are, that there are people who are much smarter than me that can help me out.
Right.
A property manager does that all day, every day. So I will never know as much as a property manager. Same with the agent and the lender and the contractor.
Right.
So we rely on them heavily.
Awesome. So what about the ones close by? Do you manage those properties yourself? Do you have other people that they do the similar situation where you have like a team of people to do it for you?
We self-manage, and by we, I'm talking about my wife and I, and
right.
I really should say she, because she's the one that, she was a teacher as well. And her goal was to leave teaching. She had done it for almost 20 years, and she wanted to move on to something different. So over the course of the last 3 years, she went to halftime, and now she's retired from teaching basically, and she's full-time in real estate. So she manages all of our properties in Colorado, and she continues to grow our portfolio as well.
Awesome. So what was the first property that you invested in?
The first property I invested in was before I met my wife. I bought a townhouse as a primary residence and eventually moved out and then turned it into a rental unit.
Okay. And then, so was there ever like an interest in real estate, or was it more from like a financial standpoint that like it's a pretty sound financial investment? Because the one thing that I don't invest in real estate. I would if I had the money to do that, which is why I'm going to get on SheeksFreaks and figure out how to manage my money better. But the one thing that I'm always interested to know is like, what makes you take that jump? Like, okay, real estate is where I want to be. And you understand that you're going to have to manage properties and deal with tenants and, whatever else they have going on. So how do you make that jump into real estate investing?
Great question. First, I'll say that real estate investing is not for everybody. But if it does sound interesting to you, then I think you should definitely look into it. So for me, when I met my wife about 4 or 5 years ago, she had started investing in real estate already. But she was pretty new. And when we met, she quickly got me on board. And at that same time, we were introduced to Bigger Pockets and really dove into that community and what they have to offer. And so it kind of took off from there about 4 or 5 years ago.
Gotcha. Okay. So then, and like I mentioned to you before we got on, excuse me, the majority of my listeners of the Morning Spotlight are between the ages of like 25 and 40. So maybe they are already investing in real estate. They're involved in real estate for the most part in some capacity. Maybe they just have an interest in real estate. Maybe they want to get like something that they can rent out on Airbnb or get their first multifamily, duplex, triplex, whatever. So what are some recommendations? Again, you're not a financial planner or anything like that. You're just a guy that does this, as part of his financial plan, his own personal financial plan. So what are some advice that you would have for somebody that's trying to get into real estate investing?
Oh, that's a big question.
Yes, it is.
There's so many different ways to invest in real estate. There really are. You can do it without any money. You can do it without any experience. And you can do it really literally anywhere in the world from wherever you are. But you don't want to just jump in without some knowledge. That's the one thing I would say that everyone can do, is to start educating themselves about real estate strategies, reading books, reading blogs, listening to podcasts, however you want to consume the information. It's all out there for free, by the way.
Right.
If you need to spend $10, $15 on a book, that's well worth your investment. But I would not recommend going out and spending, $1,000, $5,000, $10,000 on a real estate guru's class. Do not do that.
It definitely exists. You always see them here in Atlantic City or wherever. They're like thousands of people, but it's, like you said, $1,000, $5,000 to sit there for like a day class. And you're like, why would I spend that money?
And they're just going to sell you something else. Everything you need to know is out there for free. And so, you really just kind of have to find your niche. You can't just say, I'm going to invest in real estate and not have a focus. And so I would encourage them to just get online and start Googling. Bigger Pockets is, in my opinion, the best place to go, but there are other websites and blogs and podcasts that definitely can educate you. And I would spend, 3 to 6 months just learning about real estate in general and finding whatever kind of piques your interest and what area, what direction you might want to go with that, because you cannot be an expert in everything real estate. You got to find one focus. And now that I say that, I just think about what I said earlier, that, in our 15 properties, we have such a variety. We haven't narrowed down our focus, but most recently we've been doing the Burr method and out-of-state investing in the Detroit area. So I think that's kind of where we've landed.
Right.
But yeah, and eventually you have to pull the trigger. You have to pull the trigger and buy that first property. And, don't be afraid to partner with somebody who has the knowledge that you don't have, who has the money that you don't have, who has the experience that you don't have. It can be done.
Right. So we've covered a lot of different stuff. We covered the teaching side. We've covered the SheeksFreaks. We've covered the real estate investing. We've covered a lot of different stuff. I'm curious to kind of know, like, is there an end game for what you're doing? Like, do you have like a specific goal in mind? It could be on any of them. It could be on all of them. Something that you want the stuff that you're involved in, because you're obviously out here, on podcast, doing this podcast or PodMax event. You've been on podcasts before, you're putting out content. Is there an end goal, or is it just kind of like an ever evolving type thing?
I would say it's very much ever evolving. I do have a book deal with Bigger Pockets. The book will be launched late.
Oh, that's what I wanted. Yes. Thank God you mentioned that, because I put it right here on my screen and I almost forgot. So talk about the book too.
Yeah. The book will be launched late next year. It is, I give Bigger Pockets some credit. They're taking a chance with this book. And it is going to be specifically for teenagers, which is not their bread and butter. And it is going to be a book about early financial independence. So it's not even just a real estate investing book. It is a book about early financial independence, concepts, strategies, techniques, and stuff. So I'm super excited about it, obviously. And my goal is ever evolving. As you said, I'm just trying. My main mission is to provide young people who are willing to listen information and education about how to manage money, the different options they can employ to live their best life, and hopefully achieve early financial independence, so that they can then focus on maybe giving back, volunteering, starting a business that's going to help other people. And so that's kind of where I'm headed. I'm kind of taking it one step at a time, but the big picture is just to reach as many young people as I can.
Gotcha. I'm always interested to know that, because obviously everybody does a lot of different things. I sell title insurance here in New Jersey. That is my normal job, my day job. And I'm also doing this and, do some other things as well. But I'm always just interested to kind of see if there is like a ultimate goal, like a pinnacle that you're trying to reach, because like for me, it's just like it's a similar situation. Like it's an ever evolving thing. I have no plan. Like I said in an earlier episode, that it's always flattering when people say that I have like a great marketing plan, because I have none. I am literally just taking stuff, throwing it against the wall, seeing what sticks, and then just kind of, going with the flow, So I was just interested to kind of, hear what your plans were, the types of stuff that you want to get involved in and the people that you want to reach and all that, which I think is awesome. So we're getting close to the end of our episode. We have about 4 minutes left. So we are going to move the show into our closing segment, which is called Under the Spotlight. So we've been talking for 40 minutes, I would say. They've been listening to Dan Sheeks talk about a lot of different stuff, on the Morning Spotlight. But if there's one thing that you want the listeners of this show, to walk away from this episode with, what would that one thing be?
The message for young people, the one thing I would want them to take from this episode is that if you focus on learning just even a little bit about money management now, it can change your life drastically in ways you can't even imagine in the future. It can give you your freedom of time back, and maybe even a short period of time, meaning 10, 15, 20 years. And so take some extra time, instead of watching Netflix or scrolling through Instagram Reels, read a blog
Stop
post.
talking about me. Jeez.
I do it too. I do it
Yeah.
too. But just spend some time, just exploring the idea of, personal finance as a young person, and it will only benefit you in the future.
Do you have any recommendations on those? We have a couple more minutes. Like blogs. I mean, obviously, SheeksFreaks is one of them. Are there any other ones that you think are good, avenues for people to kind of go to, or is just kind of like, figure out what you're interested in and take it from there?
There are some great places to go for teens for basic personal finance. Everfi is a great website. And there are many books written for teens about personal finance. But when you get into like early financial independence concepts or real estate investing concepts, there really is nothing for young people, specifically for young people. And that's why I created SheeksFreaks.
Right.
If you try to find a a podcast for young people about these things, it does not exist. And if it does, I don't know where to find it.
Yep.
Same with websites, even social media. There's just not out there. So, but if you're young, you can get into the adult world and learn about personal finance.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hopefully what we're trying to change here.
Right.
Michael, I have to ask you, I read somewhere you're a baseball fan. Is that true?
Yeah. So I, before I started selling title insurance, I was a college baseball coach for 5 years. That was my first job out of college. I played baseball in college here in New Jersey. So I worked at I actually have worked at 4 different schools. TCNJ here in New Jersey, Franklin and Marshall College in Pennsylvania, St. John Fisher College up in Rochester, New York, which is where I got my MBA. I was a grad assistant, so I got paid to coach and got a free MBA, which was amazing.
Nice.
And then moved back to Jersey, eventually got this title insurance job. But yeah, I've always been into baseball. My dad introduced me to baseball, Yankee fan. I have my own thoughts about them, but
okay.
That's my baseball background.
Awesome. Well, I was going to guess Mets, but Yankees does make sense. So
yeah,
I'm a Cubs fan. We'll have to talk baseball sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd be happy to do a baseball episode because, I actually had a girl I don't know if you saw on one of the episodes early in the life of the Morning Spotlight podcast, Hannah Huseman, who is the mental skills coach for the Philadelphia Phillies. Amazing. Wow. She was just ranked like the number 2 voice in sports on LinkedIn, which I thought was like amazing. That I had her on the show, and then now she's doing all this stuff. So definitely check that out. It was a good episode. It just ties into the whole baseball thing. And I'm trying to get one of my, the Dodgers obviously just won the World Series. One of my former teammates is the assistant pitching coach with the Dodgers. So Mark Pryor, Cubs fan, you should know who Mark Pryor is. He's the pitching coach for the Dodgers. My friend Connor is the assistant pitching coach for the Dodgers. So I'm trying to get him to come on and do an episode with me. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll get that done. But all right. So for everybody listening, that is going to wrap up our show. I want to thank Dan Sheeks. This was great. I'll make sure, like I said earlier on in the episode, so I'm going to ask Dan to send me the stuff that he wants in the show notes, the links, the SheeksFreaks stuff, everything, the content. Make sure you go check it out, especially if you're a young person interested in getting better at personal finance, or maybe if you're a little bit older like me and want to actually learn some basic stuff. So Dan, thank you so much for doing this with us. This was awesome.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure. It was fun, and I'll definitely be keeping in touch.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. And everybody else, thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.